Welcome, everybody, to the Well-Crafted Man podcast, where we speak about what it means to be a well-crafted man and all of the things that are involved in that. I'm Nick, and of course, the infamous Spencer here. And today we are talking about habits. How do we build habits? What role do habits play in you as a human being? And how can you change your habits or build new habits and get rid of old ones to essentially change yourself entirely? How can you make yourself the person you want to be through the systems and habits that you put in place for yourself?
You just reminded me of something. They've done studies on people who have brain injuries, and like the soap opera trope is that they, get hit in the head and then lose their memories. And it's like they don't know, who the people around them are, but they still can operate in the world. But that's not what they're finding in the real world. Your memories make up who you are. So when people get these brain injuries, they recess to having to relearn everything. Like when you have a stroke and you have to relearn how to talk and how to act, and you lose all those memories. And so it's almost like the patterns that we build in our heads create who we are. And so the habits that we have, the patterns that we follow, define us.
Absolutely.
And that's really hard to change.
It can be really hard to change, since you as a person are the collective of all of the things that you do in a day, like from the memories, and you just build upon that your entire life.
Yeah.
If we take a step.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We found that if given the choice between doing something new and doing something familiar, people will always choose to do something familiar. Just the way that we're wired, because familiar is safety, which is why we're finding why people a lot of times won't leave abusive relationships or things, because it's familiar. It's what you know, which is really tough. But
and to add to that, familiarity is also the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
With your brain and talking to the rest of your body. The more you do something, the stronger those connections, the actual physical connections of your nerves, your nerve endings, and how they touch and manipulate through you. Those are actually stronger in shit you're familiar with, in stuff you are familiar with. That's one of those pathways that I can't get over. I can, though, and you can change these pathways. It's not a cage. You're not boxing yourself in with these habits. If there is a change you want to see in yourself, there are things you can do to make it happen. Obviously, people are not just their habits, or nothing new would ever happen. So we have the ability to break out and do other things.
Yeah. I think it can be hard to do. I think it's actually very hard to do, especially when you're older, in that you wake up every morning and you smoke a cigarette, and not only are you addicted to the nicotine of that, but then you're getting addicted to the process of doing it, because doing it feels really good, and then not doing it feels terrible. It's really tough to get through.
Yeah, those sorts of what's the right word here? Not trenches, but those. Yeah, I'd use the word trench. Those trenches that we kind of dig ourselves into, they pervade more than just the action. Your entire world system is built around these habits, and you don't really acknowledge it, but everything builds up onto each other.
Yeah.
And if you have been smoking a cigarette every morning for the last 30-something years, and you want to change that, you need to take a step back and not be focused in on the action of smoking a cigarette, but look at yourself and your behavior from back here. And look at your entire system when you wake up. What's the first thing you see? What's the first thing you think? Where do you focus your attention? Where do you move to? What's important to you? And if you're waking up, checking your phone and going right to the pack of cigarettes, which is right there on your counter, that's the system you have. So if you want to stop smoking, you can start by changing the system. When you wake up in the morning, maybe the cigarettes aren't that close to you. Maybe you don't check your phone immediately. Maybe there's no cigarettes in the house at all. And that's, larger steps to change pieces of your system.
It's really good. There's I can't remember where I read it, but they call it the 20-second principle. And you make what you should be doing 20 seconds easier to do, and you make what you don't want to do 20 seconds harder to do. The example I read was this guy wanted to practice more guitar, so he took the batteries out of his remote control and put them in the kitchen, or his TV remote. He put them in the kitchen, and then he put his guitar like front and center. And then when he gets home from work, instead of just turning on the TV, he sees his guitar right there. He's like, well, I'd have to go get the batteries anyway, so I might as well just play guitar because it's right here in front of me anyway.
Righteous. Yeah, that is a phenomenal example of changing the system to give you different outcomes. Here's your equation. You start changing variables here and there, and you're going to get a different answer at the end of this equation.
Ooh, changing variables. That's a cool way to put it. I like that.
Yeah.
Equations.
I have an example like that with myself and also playing guitar. And it's almost like the 20-second rule, except slightly different. How it works for me in this method is if I think about it for like 5 seconds, I get up and do it.
You might as well
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's taking up your time anyway.
Yeah, if it's already here.
Yeah.
Just go and do it. And then it won't be there at all ever again. Because if you think about how many times you think about the stuff you're supposed to do, how much time are you wasting thinking about the things that you should do?
Yeah.
On top of the already wasted time of not doing the things you need to do.
When I follow that, when I actually do that, life is so much easier. It's so much better. Dishes don't pile up. The to-do list doesn't pile up. It's just like stuff melts away. It's so much better, but it's so hard to maintain that.
And we're not perfect beings. Yeah. I mean, I talk all the time about all the things that I do to change myself because I'm the greatest dude in the whole wide world. But I didn't wake up until like 6:30 today. I work overnight, so I wake up late. But my alarm was going off at 3. I'm supposed to be up at 3. And instead, I just stayed there until 6. And that's what pushed this back an hour because I had all my other responsibilities that needed to get done. And then I neglected other things. And yeah, I'm the greatest human being in the whole wide world, but I still don't nail it 100% every day.
No, nobody does.
Yeah. As long as I get in the right direction a little bit every single day.
Yeah. I think it was last episode where we were talking about how those baby steps, they add up. You'll hit your mile.
Yes, exactly. The actual word for that or term for that came from a wonderful book that you can pick up at thriftbooks.com.
Thrift books.
Give us money.
Please sponsor us.
This book is called Atomic Habits by James Glass. Let me find out. I don't want to say it wrong.
That's okay. That's
James Clear.
James
Close.
Clear. Glass and Clear, you're close. That's a good association.
Atomic Habits by James Clear. Fantastic book if you want to learn way more in depth about how to change the systems that dictate your life, the systems that you've put in place for yourself. That's a great book. But at the beginning of that book, he talks about an example from the British cycling team. The British cycling team was just total garbage. They were always bad. They were so bad that some bicycle companies wouldn't sell them gear because they were worried that it would hurt their image.
Wow.
That's how bad they were. Yeah. They had a coach, and this coach, they got a new coach, and this coach lived really hard by the philosophy of the aggregation of marginal gains. And he applied it to everything. Because the idea behind that is if you could make every single thing 1% better, 1% more effective, as a whole, your entire life and everything you do will be more effective. You just change every little thing by 1%. And those little 1% add up to be something tremendous. And that year they won the Tour de France and got a bunch of gold medals and blah, blah, blah. And it was the 8 years after implementing that, they were the best cycling team and are regarded now in history as having the best cycling run, because they had like 60% to 70% of all the gold medals in anything Olympic. They had all these world championships. They had the 5 Tour de France's in like 8 years.
When you're living your day-to-day life, what does a 1% change look like?
1% change would be like that simple system change of putting the battery somewhere else so that I see the guitar first. You are getting that much better at getting to know about your guitar, and then that makes you that much better at actually playing the guitar because you pick it up and do it. So these little things compound onto each other.
Yeah.
I do that with my guitar. I see the guitar, it's right where I am all the time, and no matter how much time I have in the day, I at least pick it up and throw down one lick and then go on with my day. And that little bit is enough to reinforce those neural pathways and make me that teeny percentage better. And I do that every single day, and it adds up to something great. I've been playing with my guitar for almost a year, like 9 months now. And it wasn't until recently where I could say that I play guitar now. And
you felt
it's
good
just,
about it,
yeah, little bits here and there of every single day have gotten me to the point where now I know how to play the guitar. But it's a habit, and I had to change systems in my life to make that habit possible. Because I had the guitar before, April or March or whenever I started playing. I just never did it because it was in the basement, hidden away. I had everything else in front of me to do instead.
So what you reminded me of is something I'd like to touch on that's kind of also tough, is that this is all really effective stuff for people. This is all really handy. But the baseline that I see with all of this is that we have to figure out how to tolerate being uncomfortable.
Changing habits is never comfortable.
It's
good or bad.
So the way that we handle this discomfort when we get up at 5 a.m. to go running or something, like nobody wants to get up at 5 a.m. Nobody wants to go running first thing in the morning. Is that you have to be able to overcome your lack of motivation, your inability to focus in on that, because motivation is a feeling. So you need to be able to cultivate that discipline into overcoming your motivation, which is really, really hard to do. I think that's where a lot of people get caught up is, I think the metaphor I used before is going from 0 to 1 mile an hour, because it's really hard to do that. It's hard to get up in that early in the morning. So what do you think some ways to build that are? Well, I'm thinking like remembering what's important, like why you're doing it.
So being goal-oriented is good, and but don't make your goals so grandiose. There is a fun principle that I learned recently out of that book, Beyond Brawn, that weightlifting book. And how he draws the picture is you pick out your goals, whatever your goal is. This could be something lofty. I want to, be professional this. And then you break it down into, well, how does that look every 6 months? And now how does that look every month? And now how does that look every week? And how does that look every day? What are the things you need to do to take this large goal, make it feasible, but you boil it down to the singular day activities?
And then you can bring it down to the 1% changes.
There you go. Yeah, you just keep bringing it down until you get your aggregation of marginal gains across the spectrum of things that need to be done to achieve that goal. So don't make goals enormous things that are so unattainable or so far down there. Not that they're unattainable, they're just so far down the timeline that you'll get discouraged along the way. you keep focused on the little wins, and you're constantly winning.
That's a good quote. That's awesome.
I had more to that. Also, be more forgiving of yourself, because I know that many of us are very hard on ourselves. I am especially hard on myself. But you need to be kind to yourself when you don't happen to make, or if you feel like you did not make any sort of marginal gain for the day or whatever. Just get the next one, and try not to let it fall into a habit on the other end, because habits are powerful on both sides of the spectrum, good or bad.
Well, and we're programmed for bad habits, like habits that our brains should have outgrown by now, but they haven't. Like, we like buttery and carby foods because our brains evolved at a time when carbs were scarce, or when nutrients were scarce. So we love to eat foods that can like stick with us for a long time and keep us alive. So that's what we default to. That's why, you know, that's historically why we enjoy cake more than vegetables. So I think, especially as men, it's really hard not to beat yourself up about stuff. It seems like we're programmed to do it. And this sort of permeates all aspects of our lives. And like we've talked about before, in like the way that we put on a mask for emotional regulation. It's almost like we're telling ourselves that it's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay to fail. And when we do, because everybody fails, because everyone's vulnerable, we view it in ourselves as a sign of weakness, which makes us spiral even further. And then it turns into this cycle that just does not end. So that's a really good point that you brought up, that it's okay. You can be gentle with yourself. Like, we're all human, and nobody's going to operate at 100%. Even the wealthiest people in the world get help, you know?
Absolutely. You can't expect to be the professional you want to be overnight.
Yeah.
There will be setbacks.
Or no matter what your goal is, losing weight.
Whatever it is, absolutely.
Improving your marriage.
There will be setbacks. It's inevitable. Fun quote I think we brought up on the Old Man Wisdom was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Plans are completely useless, but planning is indispensable.
Yeah, that's so good. Smart guy.
Commander of the Allies and all of freedom across the world. Fight fascism.
Fight fascism. We might have that opportunity here in the next 6 months.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh, I haven't talked to you, huh? It's been, that stuff just happened. My gosh, dude. What do you think about that? Can we talk about that? Is that a thing we can talk about?
I saw an interesting tweet. It said, like, it's interesting to see all these people storming the Capitol instead of going to therapy. And that really made me laugh. That cracked me up. I just watched a documentary on Netflix that I really recommend called The Social Dilemma. I
have seen it. Oh, fantastic. It gave me everything I already felt to be true. Yeah. It was like, yes, confirmation.
Yeah. What stood out to me, because I watched it the day after they were storming the Capitol, was when they were talking about news and how they get you emotionally riled up to keep you viewing, and then, you know, which just pushes you further out. And then they showed that graph of like, let's see, I don't know how it shows up. So here's the left and here's the right. And then it used to be like this, but thanks to these news articles that keep pushing us apart, we're just going further and further and further apart. And then they asked, I think it was the former marketing executive for Facebook, and they asked him, like, this was in September. It came out in September of last year. And they asked him, like, worst case scenario, what do you think is going to happen if this keeps going? And he, without even missing a beat, he says civil war. Without missing a beat.
Wow. It is wild, man.
More people voted in this election than ever before. And it was extremely close. Like, it was absurdly close. Which means that the division isn't there. And I see all this like left-wing stuff, but since I know that I'm being manipulated through social media, I know that that's the only lens that I'm getting, because they've figured that out about me. And those people were getting right-wing stuff. getting like, one guy when Trump gave him the like stand down. It was
Stand down but stand by or something like that.
well, yeah.
Debate.
It was like, "I love you. You're great. Go home," or something like that. Like the day's over.
Oh, the route like the day after.
No, it was that. I think it was that day. I saw a video of somebody on the street who was like, "Well, yeah, he's been fighting the deep state by himself. Of course he's tired. If he gives up, we still have to keep going." And there's a lot of truth in that about that person, not about what he said, but
but
like that's where
incredible, man.
His view has been shifted into, in that he's not even fighting for who he thought he's fighting for anymore. He's fighting for because of the conspiracy theories that he now believes.
I've actually spent, since the storming of the Capitol, I've spent the last couple of days reflecting on myself, because my initial thought was, look at the stupidity of these people, how susceptible they are to nonsense. But then I started looking back onto myself, and I was like, well, how much of the things I hear do I actually take for value? And if I do want to take it for value, how much of it do I look into to confirm it and validate its value? And I do more than most people, but my care level isn't super big on that stuff, so I'm kind of like, whatever. But if you really, really give a shit about it and you're not looking into it, how does that translate? It translates right into that. And is that a testament to the stupidity of people, or the power of social media, or just the combination of the two? Because I have people I work with, several people that I work with, who believe all of this to be the election was a fraud. There's clearly deep state, and they're reasonable people everywhere except for there. And it's, I don't know. I've been having a hard time thinking about that, on how much do I really know? How much do these people really know? Where is the truth now? Even somebody like me is just so wildly confused on where do we find proper validation. And then that brings me into the importance of proper information and a role model like the president, or somebody, or some figure of a power to guide all of us. Leadership was invented by people for a reason. It's a pretty fucking important position, and we need to take it a hell of a lot more seriously than we have been. And I feel like the people who stormed the Capitol are taking it very seriously now, but they're just on the wrong end of history.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think after watching that documentary, it's a lot of manipulation for their attention, and
it's rampant. And it's not like that's new stuff, right? Like,
no, it's not new. I think
commercials did that.
Now it's just right at the right time, or wrong time, I suppose. In that he was just coming off of when fake news was actually a thing. I don't know if you remember that, but like 2014, 2015, there were all these news articles that were coming out that were totally false. One that I remember that my friend's mom told him, and then he told me, is that boneless chicken wings were rat meat, which was a fake news article that came out before the Super Bowl in like 2015 or something. So Trump, being a narcissist, having narcissistic personality disorder, really, he's spent his entire life defending himself, because his image has to be perfect. His image of himself has to be perfect. So if anyone disagrees with that, then his brain goes through incredible leaps and bounds to make them like an enemy, to make them wrong, which is why he's so good at debating people, and he's so good at tearing people down, because he's been doing it his entire life. So it was so easy for him to just go in, coming off of this fake news trend on social media, and just say, this is fake news, this is false, this is a lie, they're lying to you, I'm telling you the truth. Don't listen to them, listen to me. And then that gets pushed by social media because of their machine learning, and pushes them further and further and further.
Machine learning took it away, and it's like, this is what people like.
Yep, and there's to those people, there's no news except for what he says or what they already agree with, and it culminated in people dying.
It's so asinine, because because I feel like if these people, or anyone for that matter, regardless of your viewpoint, you look at history. History is always written by the winners, right? So,
Yep.
you look at, what do we know about the Nazis? Oh, they were bad people, and we went in there and we fucked them up. They were killing Jews, and we as America, and I can only attest to American education because this is where I was educated.
Yep.
So we as America went in there and we saved the Frenchies and we saved the English people, and everybody owes us. We're fucking amazing. Which, partly true. And however, completely neglecting any information with regards to what was it like for the people on the Nazi side.
Yeah.
How did they feel about this? What did they think? Were those the kind of people who, if faced with the information, Jews are dying by hundreds of thousands in camps right around the corner for you, would they say that's real or not? Is that fake news or not? How do they live their lives listening to the Führer, how the fuck you say it, the King German?
That's a good question. I think that it's been studied pretty in depth now, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what's happening with alt-right people and with Nazis, in that, like, propaganda was huge and just rampant. And it's like this idea that cults use of, like, you separate people from the rest of the world and you tell them that the rest of the world is bad and that you're the way to fix it. So Hitler had this plan of, like, control the media, control what his people see, and then blame the rest of the world, blame the Jewish population, and say, we have to stand up for Germany because they're attacking us. But in reality, he just wanted to fulfill his own agenda, his awful take over the world agenda.
So how different are we now from them then?
See, our brains haven't evolved.
We haven't. No. But if people put more thought into history, would this have happened? If all those people who stormed the Capitol could tell you the perspective of a German citizen in the 1940s who is, make Germany great again, go Hitler. How different are they? Do they know anything about that insight? They know nothing.
And that's because we've been manipulated by our social media accounts and by machine learning. I doubt that they've
also been failed in the education system, because if you ever want to know anything, you have to put a whole lot of effort of your own into learning anything. You're not taught shit in schools here. I mean, you can learn the alphabet and know how to count money. They don't tell you how to manage it. They say, get a job, get a house, get a coffin. Get the fuck out of my face. That's all you get here.
We have a horribly, I don't want to say our education system is horrible, but it's pretty bad. And it's super whitewashed. Like, the one that I saw a little while ago was like, we're all taught in school that George Washington had wooden teeth. Did you get that one?
George Washington didn't have wooden teeth? Is that what you're about to tell me?
George Washington didn't have wooden teeth. George Washington had teeth that they pulled out of his slaves.
Holy shit, that is crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's like, and we're not taught it. I mean, granted, I don't think you want to teach children about how our first.
They should be taught that shit, though. They should be taught that George Washington, the man who founded this nation, kept slave teeth in his mouth.
Yep. Richest man in the country at the time.
That's so fucking metal.
Yeah. Or the Tulsa Massacre. Never learned about that.
That actually...
I saw it was in the season of The Watchmen on HBO, and I thought they wrote it for the show. I'd never been taught that. And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh my God.
I actually learned about that from one of the funny left-wing Comedy Central guys. It might have been Trevor Noah. I don't think it was Trevor Noah's show, but it was one like that.
Okay.
And they were interviewing people around the United States. This is back in like August. They're interviewing people around the United States, and there's this gentleman from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who spent his whole life in Oklahoma, and he had no idea about the massacres.
Wow.
Yeah. And when he learned about that, because he was trying to get into politics, and he's also a black man. So when he was trying to learn about that, or trying to go into politics, he learned about that. He was really taken back. He's like, why does no one know this stuff?
Yep.
Why does no one know about the political overthrow in Charleston, North Carolina? I think that happened also in the 1800s. Why does nobody know about the crazy shit that happened in New York right around the time of Lincoln's election, when they just started hanging black people from the street, and then also anyone else who voted for Lincoln? Why did they not talk about, George Washington's metal slave teeth? Like, there's so much out there.
There's a lot, and it's something interesting that I saw was like those videos and those pictures that you see of like the first black college students going into white colleges. That was in the 60s. That was legitimately like our generation's grandparents. That is not a very long time ago.
No. And what also always astounds me, like very recently, there's that guy in Georgia who got elected, and he's the first black man to be a senator in Georgia. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, first black man to be elected in Georgia. And it always makes me feel like, why are we celebrating this being like, why? Okay, not why are we celebrating, but like, why is it something that needs celebrating? Why is it just not normal? This man got elected into the Senate, and he happens to be black. Why is that not normal? Why is this always like the breakthrough of social whatever?
Because it's the first time. It's history.
Why is it the first time?
Because our nation is built on this foundation of white supremacy.
That is just
rampant. It's
bonkers,
still out there, 100%.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm always taken back.
George Floyd was killed. It wasn't so much like, oh, they killed some black guy. It was, when George Floyd was killed, it could have been any one of us. It could have been any black guy.
Absolutely.
Because it happens all the time. So when he gets elected for the first time ever, it's a huge step. It might not seem that way to this, a white guy in Colorado, but it is a really big deal.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm trying to get at. Like, from a white dude in Colorado, it's like, there's not a ton of racial animosity in this state. I don't think. Like, I don't see a lot of hate in our streets. I can't attest for anywhere else. But I just don't. I don't see it here. I don't feel that way against anyone. Nobody feels that way against me.
Yeah, but
I work with a very diverse group of people.
You're also not on the receiving end of it.
No, well, I was
in. So, like, I was driving to work one day, and I still had California plates, and I was trying to merge into this lane, and this dude in this truck wouldn't let me in the lane. And he would like I'd speed up to get in front of him, and he'd come up next to me and keep me from. And he was trying to force me out onto the shoulder. And I was like, my heart was beating, and I was like, it was pretty intense. And then you gotta wonder, like, that stuff happens all the time to people of color, all the time, every day. And just because you and I don't see it, because we're sitting at the front of the class, we don't see what's going on behind us. But that doesn't mean that it isn't happening.
No, I'm not denying that it's not happening. I just don't think it happens as much here as it does, like, on the East Coast.
Oh, yeah,
like,
I see what you mean.
When I was in Boston, I was like, Jesus, everyone here is a fucking asshole, and that's where all my family's from. That's my family back there. And there's a lot more clear divides out there than there are out here. It just kind of gets softer and nicer the farther west you go, I think.
I think all this Trump stuff and everything has kind of shown that there's a lot more folks that think like the old-fashioned way.
And those folks live in the South, in the middle part of the country that nobody wants to fucking go to. That's where that shit happens.
I remember when Black Lives Matter was really in full force, this guy stood with a sign, Black Lives Matter, in this town in Oklahoma. And he was getting death threats. He just stood on the street corner, and he was a white guy, and people were like literally pulling over. They're like, you better leave or I'm going to fucking kill you. And it blew me away. And he was just standing there holding the sign. And he eventually had to leave. Somebody came up like out of the bushes, like hidden, and ran up to him and was like, "Hey, man, there's people like assembling back there. Like, you gotta get out of here." And so he had to take off running. That blows me away. This is 2021, and we have people that like
Well, that was where, Oklahoma?
some town in Oklahoma. I just
Yeah,
remember
well,
it was
fuck Oklahoma. That place sucks.
my cousin.
Nobody but
went to
messed out white
school
people
out
live there.
like an hour from there.
Fuck
And
that
that's what I was
shitty ass
thinking
state.
about. Like,
Out of all the states we have, Oklahoma is in the top 5 of most forgettable ones. Were we in Oklahoma? Probably.
when my cousin got married out there, I drank a little bit too much at the engagement dinner or whatever it's called, like the rehearsal dinner.
So you fit right in with all the rest of the town folks.
No, so we got up there and we were all making speeches, and I made a couple jokes and then just started roasting Oklahoma for like 3 or 4 minutes. And nobody thought it was funny, but I loved it. I had a couple too many beers, but
Yeah, fuck Oklahoma. If you're from Oklahoma, move. If you're reasonable. If not, sucks to be you.
Yep.
That place sucks. Texas is barely better. It's just only better because it's bigger, so there's more shit in it. Barely better. I might move to Texas.
You're gonna move to, oh boy.
I might.
What was the town you're talking about? Not Dallas.
Austin.
Austin. Yeah, I've heard Austin is pretty cool.
He moved out
Texas is
to Austin.
getting bluer. They're kind of waking up. I think it's our generation is kind of starting to move more.
Yeah, also, we're the reasonable generation. Once all these motherfuckers start dying off, the great facilitator of change, death, just needs to push these motherfuckers out of the way, and we as humanity can progress. This whole Trump and the storming of the Capitol thing jeopardizes that great movement because he's roping in a bunch of ignorant younger people, bunch of role model-less men.
Like we talked about last week with mentors.
Like we talked about last week.
Yeah.
What they are searching for is some guy of power to say, you are doing a great job, buddy.
Yep.
You keep doing you because you are the best. And if that entails you being this crazy Capitol rushing lunatic who has no idea of reality except for what he's fed by his mentor, and then that guy, and that guy is 18 to 26, that really jeopardizes our beautiful future of this generation being the most reasonable moving forward, and everybody's, we're all one, right?
The guy that talked about social media causing a civil war in that documentary, he gave a timeline. He said 20 years. And him and another guy, one of the other experts they interviewed, was like, we're talking about like epic level destruction here. Like, concerned about the survival of the human race. So I'm very concerned.
Especially because it goes so fast. You have the most people. This is unfortunate, but this is true, and it's been true for the whole history of humankind. Most people are fucking stupid. So that's
herd
one.
Mentality, confirmation bias. Yeah.
That's most people. By most, I'm talking 90s plus. Most people are stupid. 2, the sum of our smart people in power have no idea what any of this is. Not a clue. This technology is progressing so insanely fast that by the time myself or anybody like me gets to the point of having some sort of political career where we could defend our constituents against the dangers of this technology would have already soared so far past us. So it almost feels like a point of no return. Like we've hit the tipping point and down we are going. Because no matter how many great defenders who understand this technology come up and rise up against it, it's already 20 years ahead of us.
Yeah, we're the entire worldview of the world is being put together by 20 nerds in Silicon Valley who just want to make money. And they created this machine learning that is just designed to keep them looking at the screen. And the way that they're doing that is to tell them that Antifa or the alt-right is coming to kill them. And eventually you start to believe it.
That's why I spent so much time reflecting on myself after the storming of the Capitol. It was like, how different am I from them? Other than the fact that
Yes.
I'm not storming the Capitol, how different am I from them? Is the information I'm ingesting manipulating me just as much as they are, just on the other side of the spectrum?
I think absolutely. My undergrad was in journalism, um, and I was thinking about where I get my news sources from. I'm like, well, there's so many now, and they're all so specified that I'm probably being manipulated like crazy. The only ones that are actually close to center when I was in school, I don't know how it is now, but when I was in school, it was NPR was a little bit left, but they were mostly center.
Yeah, NPR is a good mid ground most of
Yep.
the time.
And,
Depends on who's talking.
and Al Jazeera America, which
Al Jazeera, I take
is surprising. But they
cautiously.
were actually the most centered news out of any of our outlets, which I think is interesting.
Anytime I read an Al
Unless they're
Jazeera,
talking about Saudi Arabia.
yeah, I like Al Jazeera, but anytime I read an Al Jazeera thing, I have to Google it and get it from an Australian news source or a British news source, because all the news sources we're ingesting have their doubles in other countries. You know, like that. Yeah. And so especially when it comes to Al Jazeera, because it's probably one of the biggest international ones out there, in my opinion, anyway. I will Google Al Jazeera's their title. I'll just copy and paste into Google and then find anything that's related, because they are really good at omitting a lot of information. And just like anyone else is, though. Everybody has their own motives to push.
That's the genius of well-crafted news stories, is that even if you're being totally central and being totally down the middle and getting both sides, you can still frame that to make someone a hero and someone else a villain. It's not very hard. You just don't do it. You just let the people that you're quoting do it for you. And it's like where you put it and where you build it. I did a whole paper on this. It's fascinating, and it's also terrifying. So, obviously, I'm having super fun time being terrified of the future. I'm wondering, like, let's say this keeps expanding. This keeps happening. The void keeps happening. I know you have an idea, sorry. Like, it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And then what if resources become hard to come by? What if climate change, like the dominoes fall on climate change, and like the oceans warm up and kill the algae, and then the lack of air causes the trees to not grow as well, and then food becomes scarce. And then suddenly it's news sources coming out and saying, like, the alt-right is hoarding the water, is hoarding clean water, or the Antifa is hoarding all of the apples. What happens then?
You know, when you start putting real survival into it, and we're not that far away. We're on the cusp of government survival, right? Like, people think that this is the end of our democracy, and it very well is near that. These sorts of actions, if allowed to continue, will make the youngest and most successful democracy also, or the oldest and most successful democracy also, the most recent dead democracy. That is super possible.
We're already on the precipice during the siege. I think it absolutely could have happened. I don't know exactly how the timeline of events went, but I saw the video where that girl climbed through the window and got shot. The Secret Service agent that shot her, he was defending like Pence and Pelosi and all those high-level people that evacuated, and he looked like he was on a last stand. Like that,
he was on a last stand. It was him.
Prepared.
No, it was him and a flimsy wooden door and like a dresser.
So what if those people were just a little bit more motivated, had a little bit more momentum, and killed that guy?
They did kill an officer there.
Yes, they could have walked out with Pelosi's head on a pike.
Exactly. The guy who the picture of the guy dressed all black, who's holding all of the zip tie handcuffs.
Yeah.
That is chilling.
Yeah.
That would have been the end of our democracy had he gotten his hands on
all it would have taken was one more person in that room who had like an assault rifle or something. Like, that's it. We're not talking about hypotheticals. And I think the fact that this is becoming real for me is where it's freaking me out so much.
It's hard to take in and really, process. But to touch on what you said earlier, when you start putting real survival, it's not just a government survival, it is now your survival. It's all done. Yeah. It's all done. All of this is done, not just the government, everything. And
historically, people like band together, but that doesn't like revert to tribalism. But that
it is tribalism. That is exactly it.
Yeah,
first thing I'm doing is building my tribe, and only us are going to survive.
Yeah, and then
that's going to happen.
This weird like Mad Max, everyone's starving and there's a lot of homelessness, but so you can either like do battle or you can die.
I will die in battle.
I was talking to my friend, I won't say his name. I was talking to my friend about this, and I came to the conclusion that even if I am being manipulated, I feel like being on the left, especially considering the siege, being on the left is the correct path, because it's the path that like wants to take care of people and wants to, use resources to help those who are less fortunate. And so if it comes to it and I have to fight for that, and what's better than fighting and dying for democracy that you believe in?
Yeah, I mean, and everyone on the other side would say the exact same thing. Both are going to die.
That's why I had the caveat of I feel like this is the right path.
Yeah. I stick to the path that I find to be my path, whether it's left or right or whatever. And it's really dependent upon the issue and all of the factors that go into the issue. I don't like taking things for face value and putting an opinion on it without actually giving thought to it. And that seems to be a very rare thing among people, is saying, hey, here's a dilemma. How do you feel about that? And instead of just giving an answer right away, we take time to think about it. That doesn't happen very much. I did this at work. I would ask people big questions about shit, and people will give me straight up answers, like right away. What if I just made this up, dude? That's a follow-up question. What if I'm just making this up?
Like, what would
How do you feel about that? I would ask them things about the siege, or, is this election stolen? Yeah. Why? Because Laura Ingraham said so.
Yeah.
That's not a good answer. That's not a good answer.
I started listening to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
None of the people who I ask know how I feel about things, because I still don't entirely know how I feel about things. Like I can give you my first off emotional feeling on something, absolutely. But to give you a proper educated answer on anything, I have to take time to think about it. I also have to give a shit enough about it to
don't get there. They go emotional reaction, done.
Yeah, and that's testament to the danger of the speed of social media. Is you don't even get time to think about what's given to you before the next one is given.
The next thing comes up. That's what I noticed with Trump. Is like I have this one friend who's unemployed, and he just I'm pretty sure he just sits around and watches the news all day.
Sounds like Trump.
And every day he comes on our group text, and he comes with did you hear about what Trump did today? Did you hear what Trump said? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about what Schumer said? Did you And it's constant. And so it put me in this mindset of he's gonna do something awful and stupid, and that's just what it's gonna be. And
it'll make you sick doing that, man.
Every day. I don't know how he does it. I really don't.
He'll have a breaking point, because I've had 2 or 3 points in my life where I was obsessively on the news.
Oh yeah.
And I was doing my best to give a full process of thought to something, and then the next thing came up, and then my queue would get too large because I'm trying to think of all these things, and then filter out the things that are related so I can lower my queue and still make a good analysis of a certain situation. And my skin would break out more. I would be stressed. I would have a hard time sleeping. It's poisonous, man. Mm-hmm. And
keeps you watching.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so I shift my perspective from what the news is saying to what is the news saying, right? Like the difference in that voice flexion is the difference of context there. And so you start looking at it as a whole and start pulling yourself out farther and farther and farther, and you realize that you're just dealing with an entity that is manipulating you.
Yep.
An
entity that wants your attention, because your attention is dollars.
Yeah, and then to circumvent, or not circumvent, to compensate for that manipulation, you start consuming more news from other outlets, but they have their own narrative, and then more, and then more, and then more, and then more. And you just, for me, it's making myself sick.
Yep.
I like to take the Mayweather way. When everybody was asking Floyd Mayweather about Trump, he was like, Mayweather knows what Mayweather's doing today, and that's it. And I was like, yep,
awesome.
That's what Nick knows what he's doing. Nick knows what Nick is doing today. And fuck everything else.
Whew. I think you touched on it a little bit ago, and I really respect Yang for saying this, but his whole thing was like, we need tech literate leadership.
Absolutely.
This is completely out of control.
When you have a senator asking Mark Zuckerberg what the internet is,
yeah,
get the fuck out of here, man.
It makes me sick just thinking about it. Yeah, just like this whole buildup. Like, what is the internet, Mr. Zuckerberg?
It's where I control the world.
Yeah. I'm working with these kids now, these teenagers, and I've asked them flat out, like, what they do with their days, and they'll go to class, and then they'll talk to me, and in between, they're on their phone the whole time. They do not get a break. Like, we're talking 16 hours a day, every day. Or they're just on screens.
That's so much.
It's absurd.
I get about 7. Now it's more because of dating apps. So I get about 7 hours a week on my phone.
That's pretty good.
A week. I try to cut it down all the time, though. I used to be like an hour a week. But granted, I have a computer. So,
Yeah. I was on my phone a lot. I downloaded this app after I saw that documentary, Action Dash. And you can lock yourself out of apps. And it tells you your screen time, how long you use each app for. So I'm looking at this right now, and the day that I downloaded it, I had 8 hours. Granted, some of that was podcasts, some of it was driving, like having the navigation, but still, like, I figure that's probably 6 hours that day.
It's wild, man. Putting in a shift on being on your phone.
An hour on Chrome. I don't use Instagram or anything already, so that wasn't a problem. So really just cutting down, because my big thing is Reddit. I'm on Reddit all the time, and I hate that I'll get on it and I won't feel anything. I'll just be scrolling and it'll be mindless and it won't make me happy. And then eventually I'll get pissed off about how stupid I think it is. Like, this is just dumb memes. So I'll get off, and then 10 minutes later I'll pop back on and check it again, like a process addiction.
Yeah, that compulsive need to just pull. When I'm at work, that's where I get a lot of phone action, is when I'm at work. And I put a lot of effort to give that separation between the feeling of the impulse and then actually picking up my phone, to put myself in the middle there and be like, what are you doing on here? And a lot of times it just ends up with me holding my phone in my hand and looking like nothing's on. There's just lock screen.
Yep.
Well-crafted man.
Well-crafted man.
It's the lock screen. And then I'm staring at the lock screen like, do I do something with this or not? No, we must put it down.
Yeah. And do you want to, this is what so I got us a TikTok account, and I noticed that.
Are you doing cool TikTok dances on it? Like, come check out the well-crafted man.
Thank God, I'm not there yet. And I noticed that when you want to exit TikTok, you have to hit the button twice.
You can't just leave
TikTok moves so fast that intermittent time between the first and second push could be enough time to keep you on their app.
That's some wicked
That's
shit.
what I noticed.
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah. And that was the straw for me. And then I was like, I should watch the Social Dilemma documentary that people are talking about.
It was a good dissertation of and otherwise
That's
probably
what my
pretty
dissertation
funny.
is going to be. My master's dissertation, I'm going to do the addictive properties of social media and how they manipulate you into staying on.
Dude, absolutely. Don't forget to lump the slot machine intermittent reward issues that fucking Tinder and Bumble and all that bullshit have also. Poison.
I'll get up there and I'll make my speech to the crowd and be like, oh, and to find out more information on this subject, you should check out a podcast called The Well-Crafted Man. Sponsored by...
This is nothing like that shit, okay? This is...
Hey, one more thing before we go. I decided to put on my thinking cap, and I think it's important to note that the things that we talk about in this podcast and videos, it's not intended to diagnose or treat any mental disorders or mental angst that you're going through. And it's really important to reach out to professionals when you feel like you are in an unsafe space or when you feel like you're kind of stuck in a rut. There's no shame in getting help. There's a lot of counselors out there that will do sliding scale payments. So you don't have to pay their full rate, and they'll be able to work with you if you can't afford their full rate. Or there's the National Crisis Hotline, which I have here. It's 800-273-8255. It's 800-273-8255, and give them a call, and they can work with you if you're going through crisis. There's people that are trained to help. They're really good. And if it's an emergency, if you're not feeling safe, then you need to get help. Call 911. Get somebody there that can help you. For real, there's no shame in reaching out for help. It's really important. So thanks for listening. Take care, everybody. Talk to you later.